Alright guys, today's goal, 10.1, the learner will understand how to graph sine, cosine, and tangent functions. Okay, so we've seen them on the unit circle, now we need to apply that unit circle to be able to graph them. Characteristics of sine and cosine, okay? The domain of each function is all real numbers. The range of each function is -1 is less than or equal to y, and y is less than or equal to 1. Therefore, the minimum value of each function is m equals -1, and the maximum value is m equals 1. The amplitude of each function of the graph is half the difference of the maximum and the minimum. So it's 1/2 max minus the min. So in this case, it's 1. Each function is periodic, which means that a graph has a repeating cycle pattern. The shortest repeating portion of the graph is called a cycle. The horizontal length of each cycle is called the period. Each graph shown above has a period of 2 pi. Okay, what they're talking about here are these. So, if you look, if I start here at 0, I'm at 0, but instead of going up, I'm going down. And now I'm back at 0 again. So what's the period? From 0 to 2 pi. Now think back to the unit circle. How long did it take us to get all the way around the unit circle and start again? 2 pi. Okay? So that's what they're talking about. The x-intercepts for sine when x equals 0 are at pi, 2 pi, 3 pi, And then for when it's for cosine, it's plus or minus pi over 2, plus or minus 3 pi over 2, plus or minus 5 pi over 2. So again, think back to the unit circle. Didn't the sine value equal 0 here and here? And then the cosine value always equals 0 here and here. Okay? Alright, so amplitude and period. The amplitude and period of a graph y equals a times sine bx and y equals a cosine bx, where a and b are non-zero real numbers, are as follows. Amplitude is the absolute value of a, so when you're giving me the amplitude, it's always positive value. The period is 2 pi divided by the absolute value of b. Okay? So that's how you can figure out how long it's going to take to repeat. Graph and key points. Each graph below shows 5 key values on the interval. 0 is less than or equal to x, and x is less than or equal to 2 pi divided by b. That you can use to sketch the graph of y equals a sine bx and y equals a cosine bx. For a is greater than 0 and b is greater than 0. These are x values where the maximum and minimum values occur in the x-intercepts. So here's the thing. You always want to find the zeros and the maxes. That's what we're looking for. Okay? Zeros, max, and mins. Alright. So let's take a look at how to graph. Alright. Here's the amplitude again. So that's kind of what we need to find. So the amplitude is the absolute value of 1/3, which is 1/3. So what that means is from 0, when we go to make this graph, you go 1/3 up, negative 1/3 down. That's our new max and min. B is pi. So to get the period, you do 2 pi divided by b. So our period is just 2. Now, let's think about this. We wanted to talk about the zeros, the maximums, the zeros, and the minimums. See how that's a fourth of the unit circle? So always take your period divided by 4. So that's 1/2. So what that means is, that'd be 1, because 1/2, 1, 2. There's our period. And then go the same this way. So -1, -2. Okay, now watch. If I go to graph these, if I start at 0 when x is 0, now, again, this is, you should not need a calculator for this. Because what's the cosine of 0? 1. And what's 1/3 times 1? 1/3. Now follow the unit circle here. Doesn't cosine start when you're going in the positive direction and go from its maximum value to a 0? Because isn't the x value 1 here and then 0 here? So guess what? If I plugged in 1/2, watch. You get 1/3 times the cosine of pi over 2, but cosine of pi over 2 is 0, so it's the 0. And then where does it go on the unit circle? To its minimum. You can always just keep plugging them in and calculating, and then it's going to go back to the 0, and then back to the max. And if I go in the backwards direction, if I reverse, doesn't it go from max to a 0, then to the min, then back to the 0, then back to the max? So there's the cosine function. So the sine function, again, find the amplitude. The absolute value of 2 is 2. So that means -2, +2. The period, 2 pi divided by 3. Got to divide that by 4, so times it by 1/4 to get our scale. So we want our scale to be pi over 6. So two pi over 6 is pi over 3, and then that'd be 2 pi over 3, and then negative pi over 3, negative 2 pi over 3. Now sine. Sine on the unit circle starts at 0. So watch. If I say y equals 2 sine of 3 times 0, you get 2 times the sine of 0. Well, the sine of 0 is 0, so it's 0. And then in the positive direction, it goes from 0 to the max. So it goes 0 up to the max, down to the 0, down to the min, back up to the 0. And then in the reverse direction, it goes from the 0 to its minimum. 0, max, 0. So there's our graph. Okay, so let's take a look at some more. Alright, now tangent. Characteristics of tangent. The period and vertical asymptotes of a graph y equals a times tangent bx, where a and b are non-zero real numbers as follows. So the period for tangent, instead of 2 pi divided by b, is just pi divided by the absolute value of b. And the vertical asymptotes are odd multiples of pi over 2 times the absolute value of b. Okay? Now, if you don't remember that, we'll go over something here, but... Okay. Key points. The graph at the right shows 5 key x values that can help you sketch the graph of a tangent bx for a is greater than 0 and b is greater than 0. These are the x-intercept the x values where the asymptotes occur, and the x values halfway between the x-intercept and the asymptotes. Okay? The function of the value is either a or negative a. So here's the graph of tangent of x. See how it just, and then starts repeating again? Okay? So let's try to graph one of these. Alright, it says y equals 2 tangent x. So the biggest thing you need to find here is the period, which is pi divided by the absolute value of 4. So it's pi over 4. And if you follow what we're talking about, it says just graph one period. Okay? So we only have to graph one period. So we need to go from 0 to pi over 4. Now for tangent, instead of dividing by 2, you need to divide by, or dividing by 4, you need to divide by 2. Okay, so it's 1/2. So our scale needs to be pi over 8. So watch, what you need to do, what that means is, you go positive pi over 8, negative pi over 8. Because there's no horizontal shift. So, think about the unit circle here. The tangent of 0. Because watch, you have y equals 2 tangent 4 times 0, which is 2 tangent of 0. Well, the tangent of 0 is 0. So I get y equals 0. So I have 0, 0. Now, if I'm following the unit circle, the tangent value is increasing until you get to right there, and that's where it's undefined. Well, that's the pi over 8 now. Because watch, if I plug in the pi over 8 here, I get y equals 2 tangent of 4 times pi over 8. But that's 2 tangent pi over 2. Well, tangent pi over 2 is undefined. Same thing with the negative pi over 8. See, this gives us that one period. But again, come back to this. It's increasing. So what that means is it starts to slowly increase this way and slowly decrease the other way. So there's our one period. Okay? So a little different, but not too bad. So again, find the period. The period is pi divided by the absolute value of pi, which would be 1. So we want our scale to be 1/2. So you go positive 1/2, negative 1/2. There's no negatives, there's no reflections anywhere, so it's 0, 0, and then it goes, and then you have your vertical asymptotes. Okay? So there we go. Be ready to do some graphs in class.